One of the greatest sources of joy in my life at the present moment is my 18-month-old daughter, River. For those of you who don't know, that's not a picture of her. It's just a great picture. And it's such a pleasure to get to watch her discover the world, to be amazed at small things that I often take for granted. The way water splashes and ripples in a bathtub or a puddle on the ground. The different textures of leaves and sand, chicken feathers and cat fur, knocking blocks down and watching them scatter across the floor, picking blueberries and strawberries, or should I say boobies and dobbies, then eating them right off the plant for the very first time. Being witness to her sense of wonder, I'm able to experience some of that same sense of wonder that's all too easy for us to forget. As the Buddhist teacher Jack Kornfield writes, when we live in the present, joy arises for no reason. This is the happiness of consciousness that is not dependent on particular conditions. Children know this. But the reality is, you don't need a young child to help capture that sense of wonder and joy. Last weekend, Anna and I left River with her grandparents and went on a backpacking trip in Los Padres National Forest to celebrate our anniversary. And during the trip, I just loved the opportunity to appreciate the world around me in a way I don't normally do when I'm just going through my routine. Hiking up a creek and noticing the ways it had carved through and smoothed over the rocks over countless millennia, creating pools and shelves and falls. And then sitting by the creek's bank and discovering all of the tiny aquatic life, like these little small aquatic bugs we spotted that make this sort of shell around themselves out of twigs and tiny rocks and pine needles and other detritus they find in the water. It was so cool and weird, and the type of thing you only notice when you sit down in a place and just be present for a long period of time. Or simply staring up at the night sky and watching the stars slowly dance across the heavens. Indeed, we can experience this sort of joy in many different ways, and at any age, as illustrated by a poem by the 12th century Chinese poet Lu Yu titled, "Written in a Carefree Mood." Old man pushing 70. In truth, he acts like a little boy, whooping with delight when he spies some mountain fruits, laughing with joy, tagging after village pantomimers, with the others having fun stacking tiles to make a pagoda, standing alone staring at his image in a decorative pool, tucked under his arm a battered book to read, just like the first time he set off for school. So much depends on our attitude and our outlook. Back when I was working at the after-school program at the Jewish Community Center in Long Beach, I remember some of the younger kids, elementary school age, asking how old I was. When I told them that I was 19, they responded, "Oh my God, that's so old!" It was funny at the time, and as I grow older, the idea that 19 could be considered old only becomes increasingly funny. When I attend our monthly Elders Circle, I'm regularly reminded, both directly and indirectly, of my relative youth as a 34-year-old. One of the things I often hear in that space is, "Just wait until such and such starts happening to you." Now, underlying that comment is a notion that as you get older, your quality of life declines. You become less happy, you experience less joy. And when we think of a certain age as old, whether it's 19 or 30 or 40 or 50 or 70, many of us will dread turning that age. Unfortunately, writes Ruth Fischel, we have a preconceived vision of what old age means, and we think of ourselves as being old when we reach it. I know young people at 70 and old people at 50. Age actually has nothing to do with it. So if we can let go of all our ideas about how it will feel to reach certain ages, we stand a good chance of growing older without anticipating the worst fears or having fears about aging. We can just be, living one day at a time, and let life take us where it will. And actually, contrary to popular thinking, people's sense of well-being is actually at its highest in old age. As a series of scientific studies have shown, there may be good reason to call them the golden years. Although older people as a whole have more physical disabilities and cognitive impairments, in terms of mental health, older people are better off. They experience lower levels of depression, anxiety, and stress, and the highest levels of happiness, satisfaction, and well-being. Part of it is through accumulated wisdom and self-knowledge over many years. And through that, there's a greater capacity to brush aside the smaller stressors in life and make socially healthy decisions. But one of the other things that I've noticed is that as many people get older, they often stop worrying about what others think about them. Just like the little girl who dresses herself in her favorite clothes, no matter how they might clash, because that's what brings her joy, no matter what others may think. The more we can follow the Spirit and do what the Spirit says do, regardless of what we think others might think about us, the more joy we will find. Likewise, as we age, the tendency to compare ourselves to others often starts to decrease as we become more comfortable with just being ourselves. And I think that's an incredibly important lesson for those of us who are younger to learn. It's so easy as a young adult to look around at this time when there are so many possibilities in front of us and notice how many options there are that we're not taking advantage of, that we're leaving by the wayside, picking the other path, and to feel like maybe there's something we should be doing differently. It's a time of transition, of uncertainty and searching. And then we often may see some of our peers who seem to be succeeding in ways that we are not, and we feel like we should have it together, like the way we see them. Although one of the greatest things I learned is that never compare someone else's outward appearance to your own inner appearance, because you will tend to see the positive in them and the negative in yourself. It's never a good comparison. And so at this time of searching and transitions, find what you're passionate about and pursue it. And if you don't know what that is yet, don't worry about it. You've got a lifetime to figure it out. Some of the most interesting people still don't know what they want to do with their lives. Now, for me, things really started to come together at age 26. 26 was a great age. I was gainfully employed in a job that I found somewhat meaningful, even if I didn't always like it. But more importantly, it was then that I really started to consider my call to ministry. But 26 was also a great age for other reasons. I had a close friend circle. I was in a good relationship. I was riding high off the election of Barack Obama. Mostly external circumstances, but what really tipped that year over into greatness were the things I was doing for my own enjoyment. Spending a lot of time in the garden, learning to play the drums and jamming with my brother in my parents' garage, and acting in plays with a community theater company. The next year, at 27, I left my hometown and my friends, Our relationship ended due to geographical differences, and I started seminary, quickly burning through my savings. The external circumstances of life certainly got harder, but I also left behind acting and drumming. Gardening was the only joyous activity I kept up. It was a hard transition. And for a while I had this script in my head that 26 was the best year of my life. I had reached the peak and passed it. Not that I wouldn't have good years in the future, but that was the high point I would never attain again. But I came to realize that although that may have been the overall best year of my life thus far, that didn't mean that an even better year couldn't be coming in the future. And with what I know now about growing older, it seems quite likely. It's so important not to look back with regret, writes Ruth Fishel, but to look forward to aging with joy and purpose. We can make our life something we are proud of from this day on. Whatever time we have left of our life left to live, we can make it something for which we have no regrets. Finally, at this time of political turmoil, at this time of social unrest and ecological devastation, it can seem particularly difficult to find joy. But this is when it is most important. Without that sense of joy, there is little to sustain ourselves for the hard work in front of us. So I want to leave you with a reflection from my colleague, the Reverend Peggy Clark, an incredibly dedicated activist with whom I have had the great pleasure of working with on promoting environmental justice within our faith. She writes, "If the work for peace isn't sourced by joy, the world we dream about will never be made manifest." Take a moment to remember. Remember the first time you spoke your truth. Remember the rest you took in the garden. Remember the conversation that went deep into the night. Remember the meal you shared with people you love. Remember the birth of your child. Remember the silence of a morning or the laughter of an evening. Those moments are the wellspring of our work. There is much work ahead. Rights to fight for and wrongs to protest. A planet to protect and people to value. There's a margin that needs to be made center and a center that needs to be made whole. So we need joy. We need to remember the grace that abounds in the sun, and the sun rises in magnificence every day. We need to celebrate the tiny gifts we are given as the universe shines her great fortune upon us. And we need to celebrate the tiny gifts we give as if we ourselves were the universe. We need to applaud the sunrise until we are propelled back into the world, filled with joy. Then grounded and filled with joy, we can begin to turn the world around. And in that spirit, I invite you to join me in singing our closing hymn. But first, I forgot to skip to that picture, and it's so great. That was supposed to go earlier for obvious reasons. But invite you to join me in singing our closing hymn, number 1074, Turn the World Around.